My agenda is very simple. I want us to have the best life we can possibly have. Just like the Finns, who are content with their lives. They don't think of their programs as social programs. They get health care, child care, employment and unemployment benefits. They're well provided for, and so are the French. The French are contented as well, and everyone in the OECD countries lives longer than we do here in America. That shouldn't be. We shouldn't have low mortality rates. We shouldn't be dying younger. We shouldn't be suffering from more fentanyl. We shouldn't be suffering from the heat. And there's a whole bunch of items that shouldn't be happening to us and didn't when I was growing up. And so all I want for everyone else in this country is to have the kind of life that I knew was available when I was a kid. There was no doubt in my mind I was going to college. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to get a degree in higher education. I knew I wasn't going to be a secretary or a nurse. I even thought about medical school, and I was a scientist getting my PhD in neuropharm at Cornell Med. And I thought about other careers and entered them. And now it appears in my 8th career, I'm a teacher. I look at our world and I philosophize about what I know can be. Not what should, not what couldn't, but what can be. Because we've got the smarts. The other day I was reading, I don't remember which paper or magazine it was, that the Amazon has stopped deforestation by 60%. So since Lulu has been there in power and Bolsonaro is out, the Amazon has stopped being deforested. I know that when we put our mind to anything and we're inventive, we can resolve our problems and our differences. There's nothing more important than what's happening on our planet and the climate change and the weather extremes that we're seeing. I spoke to a young Indian man today when I was in a taxi cab who said in Punjab, they've got 8 feet of water. They have so much water, everything is flooded. Beijing is being evacuated because they've got flooding. Every country is experiencing heat waves and heat domes. Don't you think that this is going to cause crop failures? The only crop that I heard of that's really successful is medjool dates in Arizona. They love 90-degree heat, 100-degree heat for 100 days. They're happy. Medjool dates are thriving in Arizona. But what about the people? What about the people working in agriculture or in the farms or in industry where factories are not air-conditioned? Are they surviving as well? That's what gets me, that we need OSHA regulations now for what's happening to us now. We got to keep people safe. And to keep people safe, it means they got to be able to stay alive in the heat. They can't work during the day, then we've got to make provisions to work at night. If they need water breaks, hey, I know I need about 2 liters of water every day, and I'm not even doing that much. They need water to stay alive. Unlike hypothermia, which you get when it's too cold, you've got a warning sign when it's too cold before you die. But with hyperthermia, death from heat and dehydration, there is no warning sign. You could just black out. And in my case, that once happened when I was a young woman and I was at Masada in Israel. And I was walking around and being very, very protective of my family, but I forgot to drink. And so on the tramway going back, I saw the mountain recede before my eyes, and I guess I passed out for a couple of moments. Was it black? No, it was kind of like a pale pink, and I needed water. And that's what happens when you're dehydrated. You don't work, you lose productivity, you lose your health, and we need regulations. And as far as I'm concerned, it's never too late to regulate. Never. It's like taking the first step towards getting off fossil fuels. It's never too late to get off fossil fuels, except when it will be. And our climate is no longer just pivoting to what it was a couple of million years ago. It's here to stay. When you hear the oceans are 95 degrees, what do you think is happening to the fish and the coral? When humans have to exist in 100-degree weather without air conditioning or heat pumps, we're not going to exist. I didn't even go out when it was 90 degrees here or 95 and too humid, because I already know that even if I run in and out of cabs and I do any kind of exercise, I'm going to be hours in recovering at home, drinking a lot of fluids. So this is not a world we can pass on for our children and our grandchildren to inherit. This is a world where we've got to take action now. We can't, on the one hand, say we want to go green and we want to do more renewables and we want to build nuclear power plants or more wind farms or more solar farms. It takes more than just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because if you don't take the first step towards doing it, it never happens. And that's what's going on now. Politics affects us. And it affects us right now in many negative ways. We're addicted to fossil fuels. It's in our clothing. It's in our petroleum. It's in our polymers. We're ingesting it. We're breathing it. It's causing fires all over the world. And are we stopping? No. And should we be? You bet. There are indeed carbon capture proposals that work. We're giving over probably $1 trillion in taxpayer money to the fossil fuel industry. $1 trillion would go a long way to rebuilding our society, giving folks tax breaks or real cash to buy electric vehicles, to buy heat pumps, and to put their kids in child care centers so they can work. It's $1 trillion, not spread out over 10 years. We're giving $1 trillion away every single year. And the same thing with big agri. Big Agri is not accountable to anyone. They plant what they want, when they want it, and we're still subsidizing them. And if you own golf courses and you put a couple of goats on it, that's considered a farm. Those farm subsidies were meant for small farmers, not for Big Agri. And Big Agri is getting also so many billions. I heard 28 billion, but I know it's much more than that. And for years, they have been willing to give up those subsidies, because not only do they get the subsidies, but they also get real estate rebates. So maybe their real estate that they're farming on costs them a third less than it would normally if you were a small farmer. There's a lot of inequities. That's what I rail against, is the inequity. I know that folks who can't live under a tree or in a house that's well insulated have to go to work where there's no air conditioning. They're not treated the same way as upper management and the folks who are lobbying big government, whether it's on the state or the local level, for tax deductions. Those guys and women, they're insulated from the heat. They're insulated from the scarcity in food. And that isn't right. Because since they're so insulated, do you think that they care about you or me? If we have to go out, who subsidizes us if we fall down and if we can't stand the heat? Nobody. There are inequities in our society. It's probably global, but I think we see it more here because we now have a two-tier society. The very wealthy, which may be the top 6 or 7% of the country, and then there's the rest of us who may be experiencing higher prices for food, have food insecurity, becoming homeless because they don't have jobs and they can't afford the rent, or they have jobs, but it's not sufficient to cover the rent. We got to do something about it. I don't say be afraid, but I do say be proactive. I do say vote for people who have your interests at heart and get the other people out. They're like the Neanderthals, though I think I'm denigrating Neanderthals. They just don't belong in politics and legislating what's right for you and me, because they don't live like normal people. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have debt. And they don't have the need to survive that we do. Don't vote for them anymore, folks. Think about the world you want to live in and vote for people who will make that possible. Not by saying what they're going to do, but by actually making the steps and taking those steps so that we get there.